Hey, hello, I'm Kråkan, also known as Scarecrow, and welcome to Closet Movie Rambles, where I talk about old movies that I found in my closet while cleaning. This week's movie is Die Hard 4.0, Yippee edition, starring Bruce Willis, Timothy Olyphant, and Justin Long. It's an action movie from 2007. It's about 2 hours and 3 minutes long. So the movie starts up with a group of hackers, two parts, exchanging information and code and bank accounts. So one part is buying code to do something with it, and the other part is basically selling it. And later in the movie, the guy who's selling the information to the other group, he gets his computer rigged up and it explodes. So get this introduction to the movie like that. And later we cut to a couple making out in a car, and they get interrupted by Bruce Willis's character, John McClane, and he asks the guy to get out of the car. And then we find out that it's actually John McClane, his daughter, is making out with this random guy, and John doesn't like that. And Lucy kind of calls him get out of my life, basically, because don't stalk me around, don't contact me. If I want to contact you, I will, but keep out of my life. And then Lucy leaves, and John is left. He returns to his car, and he gets radio in to check up on a guy, another hacker basically, and he's supposed to finish his shift and go home, but he takes this last assignment. So we cut to the other guy that John McClane's about to visit, and it's called Farrell, and he's basically a hacker. He makes an algorithm, sort of. He does math-based programming. That's what he does. But when we cut to him, he's basically chatting with another one of his friends called Warlock, and he basically asks him if he's way over his head, and Warlock replies like, "Yes, you are way over your head." And then John McClane arrives on the scene, and he knocks on the door, and Farrell kind of has to open up, and he goes to the door, and John asks him, through the door crack, like, are you Farrell? No, I'm Daisy Duke, and don't rub it in my face because I got a lot of shit up when I was a kid. And okay, you're not him? Okay, sure. And then he asks John to show some ID, and he sees that he's a detective and all that stuff. And one of his neighbor friends walks by and calls Farrell by name, so he's basically exposed, and he drops the act and he lets John in. And on the street there is a van with the bad guys, the bad guys hackers, and they were supposed to make his computer explode, but in order for him to do that, he has to press a button on the keyboard, but he hasn't done that because he was interrupted by McClane. So McClane basically says, like, I'm gonna bring you in, there's something to do with the feds, I don't know about it, I just want to go home, I bring you in and then I'll go home, or something like that. And Farrell says, okay, sure, I'm just going to power down my computer, my equipment. And he starts doing that. And John basically breaks one of his limited edition figurines of I think it's a robot, like a Gundam, Japanese anime thing. And we'll fix that with some crazy glue or crazy super glue or something, yeah. And Farrell gets annoyed, and they're about to leave. And the bad guys have situated a sniper on the rooftop that looks right into Farrell's window, and he starts to fire up, and there's a gunfight, and they get down, and John McClane, the character, uses a fire extinguisher to blow. He throws the fire extinguisher and he fires at it, and it explodes, and the guy, one of the bad guys, flies through a window and down the streets below. Crazy action, kind of. And And then the figure that John, I think is the one that John tampered with earlier, it falls down on the keyboard and the bomb detonates. And it's fire and smoke everywhere, and they escape down the fire exit down through the window, and they get into the car. And the sniper on the roof gets down, and there's some parkour thing. He climbs up on a fence, and John drives his car right into the fence, and the guy topples over to the window sill, and there's some driving. And basically what happens is that the fence kind of gets caught in a dumpster or something, and flings the guy away, and he hits the asphalt. And John calls this in that I got your hacker, and now I'm gonna turn this in, and tells him all the things, the shootout and everything that's happened. And later the bad guys kind of gets up, and he has to talk to his boss about and tell him that we didn't get the hacker, and there's the police is involved and everything. So he calls his boss on the phone, and it's basically this the main bad guy is called Thomas Gabriel, and he's this kind of smart person that really used to work for the government or something like that. We get to know that later in the story. And he kind of says like, sure, we'll get them next time. And they kind of gear up. And later we cut to John and Farrell driving down to Washington, because that's where it was supposed to bring on in these hackers, kind of. And in the car, John wakes Farrell up by playing loud Creedence music, and they get into an argument. And Farrell's character says, "Just because it's old doesn't make it a classic. This is just old man rock." And then they have a discussion about how Farrell doesn't listen to radio because of the news is filtered through corporations and media, because they basically tell you what they want you to think. And meanwhile, while this is happening, the bad guys is hacking the traffic lights and causing all kinds of commotion. They plan this ahead, because this is the date of 4th of July, basically America's Independence Day, and they're basically in the middle of the Capitol. So there's people everywhere, and they, by messing with the traffic lights, they basically create chaos. So there's a deeper plan, a plot that bad guys are up to. And then in this traffic jam, McClane and Farrell get stuck, so they have to move on to the FBI's headquarters by foot. And the hackers then triggers the anthrax alarm, which forces the FBI and everyone to get outside, because that's one of the precautions with anthrax. But they don't know it's a fake, so they basically lure them out in the open. And John and Farrell arrives at the FBI van, and the hackers releases a video package, which basically explain what they have demands or what they want, kind of as a scare tactic too. So they put up this tape with this is basically a message playing, but it's spoken by the former presidents, and it's kind of a cut reel with footage of that. And basically Farrell explains that this is what they call a fire sale. Everything has to go. And John says like, okay, what's a fire sale? And he explains that first they take out the transportation, and then they take out finance and communication, and then they take out utilities as gas, electricity, and water. So you basically can't move anywhere, you're stuck, and you don't have any provisions. They basically shut down every system by system. And they're basically getting nowhere. So Bowman, as he's called, the head of the operation there, he doesn't have time for Farrell or John, so he basically sends them away with another agent, because they're not getting any more information out of Farrell at this point. So John, Farrell, and this agent gets into a car, and they drive away, bringing Farrell to prison or some interrogation or something like that. And on the way, John questions Farrell about what his involvement in this are, because he basically sees Farrell as a criminal, not as a good guy. And then Farrell kind of explains that he made a mutating algorithm. It's basically a smart key lock. So it's basically a smart encryption that he, math-based kind of thing that he came up with. And the hackers are using that to get into restricted areas and such. And on the comm, the hackers kind of find them. And this is kind of one of the stupider things that so the hackers have more or less control over every system. So they tap into the comm system of the police car. And they hear Farrell's voice. And it's kind of stupid because if they have all the audio channels, and they kind of, oh my, that's his voice, right? That's Farrell's voice. And they found him by isolating his channel, and they find the car. And so the hackers kind of will lure them in. They want to get Farrell, leave no witnesses kind of thing. So they call in one of the girl, actually she's called May, one of the hacker girls, also a mercenary kind of character. She takes over the channel, and she calls them in and guides them through the traffic. And then Farrell recognized the voice because it was the same person that he was exchanging his bank account and for the main algorithm in the first place. So he knows this character, this girl, and he tells McClane that this is one of the hackers. And then McClane fools them by calling out a 587, which is so I mean it's a busy day central, but it's like there's a lot of 587s out there. And she said, yeah, there's a lot of 587s. Well, that's funny because there's not a lot of naked guys and girls running around, walking around. And then he basically gets them call out, and he says, lady, I want to talk to your boss. And then Thomas Gabriel comes on the line, and basically while Gabriel is more or less shit-talking John McClane, figure out that he has a daughter, has a son, and he basically deletes his fundings and pensions and all that. And he says, if you bring Farrell in, I can make you set for life, and you will have a good future, and you can just walk away if you want to. But John, because he's a badass, he's like, I don't care, I'm gonna get you, and all that stuff. And they say, okay, sure, play it your way. And they send him in a chopper on their location with the mercenaries, and they more or less shred the cars with bullets. And Farrell and John gets out of the car, and they get another cop car, and they drive away, or they escape the chopper, which is following them and shooting at them. And so they drive into a tunnel to escape the chopper. And the hackers turns out the light in the tunnels, and basically so they can't see anything. And then they open up all the ways into the tunnel, meeting them in the middle, and they turn out the lights, so all the cars are just going in there. By some miracle, there's some explosions and crashes and everything. And John takes another car, and you can see the chopper at the entrance sort of hover there, and he kind of gets in the car. And he just drives the car right into the chopper. It kind of ramps up, and it kind of shoots right into the chopper, and it explodes. And one of the guys jumps or falls out of the chopper and survives. It's kind of a crazy thing. And the chopper explodes, and he goes back to Farrell to check if he's okay. And John is all bloody and bruised up by splinters for car, pieces of the car and glass and everything. And he says, I can't believe you just did that. You killed that car you killed that chopper with a car. He's like, yeah, seems like a good idea at the time. It's kind of funny because they're both laughing at it because it's kind of stupid. So at this point, the bad guys think that John and Farrell are dead. So they move on with their plan. They use the diversion of the anthrax alarm to get to the server rooms, and they use Farrell's mutating algorithms to basically bust open the door. And Farrell meanwhile this is going on, Farrell tells John that they can track their phones. So McClane, or John, he just steals the pedestrian's phones and uses it to call Bowman and tells him what's happened and the bad guys, what's happened and everything. And also, while this is going on, John looks at a monitor, and the bad guy sends out another video package. And it's basically a scare tactic this time also. And there's footage of the White House exploding. So both John and Bowman rush out from their location and look and see if the White House is okay, because it exploded in the footage. And they found out it was just a fake dud, and they kind of look around and, you know, and so John basically asks Farrell, sir, if you were a hacker, which you are, if you were to stage this fire sale, what would you have done? What's the next step? And Farrell thinks a bit, and then he realizes that the comms are out and the utilities are basically going down. So the next step would be, because there's systems you can reach while hacking, while others are physical. You actually have to go there. You can't hack into them. You have to be there physically to jack in, basically. So they need to go to the servers, and that's in West Virginia. There's a gas plant or something. So they're supposed to go there, and they steal a car, or they try to steal a car, but they break into it. And there's an auto response, and Farrell has to lie to the operator on the other line, a woman named Dolores, I think. And he lies about John being his father, and that they hit the tree, and it's an emergency, and I can drive into the hospital. We have to engage the safety lock, and then she does that, and they basically drive down to West Virginia. I think it was, yeah, West Virginia. And on the way there, Farrell calls his friend Warlock and for advice. And John basically spills his beans about his family, his wife and kids, and how things aren't working as they should do. That he's not a good father and all that. And the bad guys go down to West Virginia, and they basically take over the power plant and start hacking it to get what they want. And then John and Farrell arrive at the scene, and they sneak in, and there's a fight, and John gets out of it. You know, they basically, Farrell tried to redo, or how do you say it, like reverse what the hackers been doing to the system. And then the character May arrives and basically kicks John's ass and throws him out a window. And she tells Farrell to just go back and remove your things you've done to this computer and whatnot. And then John returns in a van. He drives us all the way up to the control room, and he hits May, and they drop into this like elevator shaft, and they fight there, and the car is hanging by the wires. There's some guns in action, and the car is hanging like virtually down the shaft, and they're trying to escape the van. And there's another guy coming up from the top trying to shoot John, but then Farrell kind of hits him, and he falls down the car, and there's all these action movements, and John grabs to the line, and the van falls down. And basically Farrell and John goes back to Farrell to try to fix the computer things, and John is just there. And so the first thing that Farrell does is he sends this E-bomb to the hackers, the bad guys, and then Thomas Gabriel is on the line, and John basically mocks him, kind of, because it's not really, I really didn't tell this, but Gabriel had this affair with May, and they were kind of deep in love, and he kind of killed May, so he kind of shit talks him. And Thomas Gabriel is not the man you will mess with, so he sends all the gas, all the pressure down the pipeline to the location that John and Farrell is. So they basically have to escape everything before everything overloads and explodes. And John and Farrell takes cover in a van, and they survive the explosion. And the power goes out in the city below. And Lucy there's a power shortage, and McClane's daughter gets stuck in an elevator, and the elevator stops moving. Yeah, John and Farrell goes to see Warlock, and they figured out like he is probably the only one smart enough to have a power source backup. So his house will be the only house in the city with lights. So they find his house, the Warlock's house, and they knock on the door. And Warlock's mom answered the door. This old lady, and they convince her to basically let him in. And they go down to Warlock's command center, as he calls it, but it's just his mom's basement, and it's kind of funny. And yeah, and at this point, it's kind of funny because the Warlock, he doesn't like authority. He definitely doesn't like cops, and he gets to know this, and he doesn't really like that Farrell is there either, because he kind of knows what's been going on. And he asks John, because it looks like, oh, nice poster or something. He says like, and there's this poster of the Mandalorian warrior Boba Fett from the Star Wars movies. So so Warlock gives him a chance. So you're a Fett fan? You're a Boba Fett fan like that? And John says, no, I was always more of a Star Wars kid. And it's kind of funny because Warlock kind of damn it, this guy, you know. But they convince him anyway. And so Warlock kind of explains to them who this Thomas Gabriel is, and that he's basically this guy that works for the government in the past, and he complained about their security, as it were, because it was so bad. So he took his laptop in one of the meetings and basically started hacking NORAD to prove his point that the security is bad, and he got halfway in and get threatened by gunpoint to stop. So he's basically a bad guy. So they ask Warlock to hack into Woodlawn to find out, and the bad guys figure this out. They see that someone is hacking into their system, and they use the Warlock's webcams to see that. They learn that Farrell and John is still alive, and they're at the Warlock's house. And they also find out that Lucy is trapped in an elevator, and they show this footage to John and Farrell, and so that's basically what's happening. So John and Farrell, after a discussion with Thomas Gabriel, they go down to Woodlawn to basically kick his ass, and Thomas Gabriel basically brings in Lucy as a bargaining chip, as a hostage to John McClane. So the brilliant thing about this scene is that they need to alert Bowman's attention, because Bowman, due to the cut of the fire sale and everything, phones are out and communication is down and power is down, everything, the utilities are basically down. So they need to send Bowman a message. So they sneak into the cooling tower, and Farrell basically shuts down a fan, and that gets the security alarm going. And Bowman realized that someone is in the Woodlawn trying to hack, or something is wrong, so he finds out about it. And and of course Bowman gets the information, and he gets informed that this system that they use in Woodland was basically designed by Thomas Gabriel when he works for the DoD, the Department of Defense, and that's not good at all. And they don't really know what's in these servers, but the people on NSA informs them that it's basically after 9/11, the terrorist attack, they moved every secure information to one place, and that's Woodlawn. And it's kind of stupid. They thought it was safe, but they wouldn't count on this one guy knowing how to break in to actually go rogue and break in. So that's exactly what happened. So now they're in a really tight spot. And meanwhile, while this is going on, Farrell puts on a password to the bad guy's computer so they can't log in. And him and Lucy gets captured, and there's a fight scene and stuff. And basically they escape in a van, and John follows them in a truck. So this leads to a situation where John has followed them in a truck, and they are basically driving down the highway, and Thomas Gabriel gets into the comms, or hacks into a comm of a fighter jet, one of those F-16s or some kind of fighter jet, and it gives him the go codes and basically tell him that John McClane, or this truck which John McClane is driving, is basically a terrorist or something. So you're clear to open fire. And there is this ridiculous scene of John driving around, and the truck is basically shot to pieces, and he jumps onto the fire jet, and the pilot bails out, and the plane crashes, and all this crazy stuff happening. And during this hot action, actually before John gets into the truck, he calls up the Warlock and basically tells him that call Bowman, they had my daughter, bring in all the boys, basically, because in the previous scene at the command center, or the basement of Warlock's mom's house, there was an old one-way radio, like these old emergency radios. I forgot to tell that, but he uses that to contact Warlock, and so he can contact Bowman, so he can send back up if anything goes south, because John McClane is basically out to save his daughter. But anyway, the fighter jet explodes, and he gets out of there, and he goes to the location where Thomas Gabriel and everyone had stopped. So he goes in there, he gets shot, and he hides behind a car, and Thomas Gabriel kind of grabs him and puts him up from behind, basically grips him up, and he puts a gun to his chest where he already has a gun wound or something, and it pains him. And then John kind of do this stupid move where he makes Thomas Gabriel pull the trigger, and it's kind of a stupid scene because John gets shot through the shoulder, just hurting him, but Thomas Gabriel actually dies from this, and he falls back, and Farrell gets a gun, and he guns down the other assailant that is holding Lucy, and then Bowman's guys comes in and save the day, or secure the area. And later they're at the ambulance and paramedics, and they're being taken care of. And then we learn that there's like this kind of love, not a love relation, but a certain interest from Lucy and Farrell. They both kind of like each other, and John is like, no. He kind of like, he's like, nah, I don't like this, Jesus, Lucy, or something. He says like something like that. And then there's like a quote like, because in the beginning of the movie, Farrell asked John, what is that makes you this guy? And then John can't pretty much explain what it means to be a hero, but then he kind of reverses it on him, because now Farrell has been through all this, and he saved John by shooting another guy, and he says, that's what makes you that guy, kind of like the hero guy. Why do you do it? Because that's what heroes do, or something like that. And that's the end of that chapter. So Die Hard 4.0, Yippee edition. It's all one of those movies like it's a mindless action movie. I said this many a time, but it's all these kind of when you stop and try to take notes of movies, when you start to write down and go by scene, try to recreate the movie, make a review, talk about it like I'm doing now, you kind of see the main cracks of like the plot and how stupid some things are. Because how can the hackers? I know they planned ahead. How can they actually hack into stuff like this fast? How do they know all these utilities, how they work? And they don't leave traces, and they're very professional. It's like, it's kind of stupid. But if you look at it as an action movie, it's kind of fine. So can I recommend this movie? Nah, not really. But if it's on TV and you have nothing better to do, you sure give it a watch. It's not a bad movie. It's just, I mean, Die Hard 1 and 2 is better. Yeah, that's a verdict. Give him a thingy. So I hope you like this, and hope you have a good day, and take care.